Daniel, thank you so much for being here today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Likewise, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So tell me about what experience or insight prompted you to start Wasoko.
My experience with Wasoko originally came from the time that I spent living in Egypt. So I was doing a study abroad program where I got to know some of the local shops in my neighborhood, and I realized that they had these challenges with ordering and restocking the basic goods for their store. And I'm a software developer by background, and figured that there should be some kind of technology system that could be put in place here to help bridge that gap.
That makes a lot of sense. So tell me about your founding and your funding journey. What's it been like for you raising venture capital, and how did you go about that?
The original business actually ended up getting started in Kenya after we had invitations from a number of manufacturers there to pilot. That pilot ended up going fairly well, but we ended up pivoting the model to be a full-fledged first-party e-commerce system, by which that means actually having our own logistics and warehousing in-house. So not just an app, not just a website, but really doing the full operations as well. And that ultimately led to us expanding the business and definitely requiring a decent amount of funding, which first came in with our seed round of $2 million in 2018, which was then followed by $14 million in 2020 for our Series A, and most recently last year with our Series B of $125 million.
Yes, that was the big one. That is the one I remember. So has that helped you expand further, and what has that done for you as a company?
Absolutely. We've been able to expand to right now 5 countries across Africa, serving over 50,000 of these mom and pop stores. And we're definitely planning to get to many more shops and hopefully many more countries, even just within the next few years as well.
Amazing. That's fantastic. How do you feel about the state of entrepreneurship currently in Africa as a young entrepreneur yourself?
It's definitely rapidly grown and improved, I'd say, since I got started, which was 7 years ago. So even though I actually am still 29 for a couple more months, I got started when I was pretty young, and I'd say when the ecosystem was quite young as well, 7 years ago. And what I've seen personally being in the ecosystem since then is a rapid increase both in the number of companies but also in the quality of companies as well. So I've been seeing a lot of founders who have, I would say, a lot more relevant experience when they're coming in and starting their companies than certainly I had when I was getting started. And I've been privileged to even be able to advise and invest in a number of those as well, which I think is a really critical part of the journey to support the next generation of companies coming up as well.
And speaking of that, we were just talking about your Wasoko Innovation Hub. I want you to tell us a little bit about that, and what are some of the things that excite you that you've been seeing from young founders?
So the Wasoko Innovation Hub in Zanzibar is a public-private partnership with the government of Zanzibar titled Silicon Zanzibar, to which really what we're aiming to do is, not just Wasoko, but make Zanzibar overall the most attractive place to set up and run your tech company in Africa. And that's really about bridging a number of the challenges that we faced as Wasoko in the past 7 years. First and foremost, talent mobility. So right now you have 54 countries across the continent, and for the most part, actually, unfortunately, very restrictive visa regimes between them. So you can be from Nigeria and have a great job offer from a tech company in Kenya, but you won't necessarily actually get that visa to go take on that job. And these kinds of barriers between these 54 countries are ultimately what is holding back the potential of the continent of Africa, because if we're all stuck between these artificial borders where it's difficult to meet, to work together, to trade goods, then we're never going to achieve the full potential of all of us together.
So are there people who've been trying to solve it, or what's exciting you now about the young innovators on the continent?
So certainly with Silicon Zanzibar, what we're doing in working with the government there is streamlining the process so that any African company that is interested in setting up their Pan-African hub in Zanzibar can do so easily and also bring together all the talent that they're looking for. Beyond that, what I'd say is, fundamentally, in order to really achieve the investment expectations of the VCs and investors that are backing most tech companies on the continent, you do have to be multi-country, you do have to be Pan-African. So I think that we're seeing kind of both the actual founders like myself who have encountered these challenges as they've gone along start to really take a voice in the policy and in the government space to actually give our feedback and say, look, these are the things that are not working for us, or that are holding us back from moving faster and growing more, and ultimately paying taxes, more taxes, so that we're able to actually help individual countries thrive as well. But are still being held back by a lot of these protectionist policies, these nationalistic policies, and the reality being that you have the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement, which has committed 53 out of the 54 countries to becoming one single market. But what I'd say is the movement towards that has still not been satisfactory. It's been much slower than what I'd like to see, and especially when it comes to talent mobility, the ability for workers to cross borders and go to the places of the best opportunity where they are given offers and where they can join companies that are doing innovative, exciting things. We really need to see that come to fruition.
Makes sense. And speaking of challenges, I want to talk a little bit about Amazon. They're allegedly coming to South Africa. How are you looking at that? Is that a big competition for you?
Fundamentally, of course, the Amazon model, which is B2C, as well as South Africa, are very different models and markets from what we're doing with B2B supplying mom and pop stores in the 5 countries where we currently are. What I'd say though is that the B2C model, certainly as it exists in the US, which is Amazon's core market, is a very, very, very different model from what you will find is relevant to the African citizen on average. Big challenges obviously with logistics. Average citizen does not have a home address. They don't even have a street name usually for wherever they're living. But also you have this reality of the purchasing power. Average citizen is going to be making $3 to $5 a day. You're not going to be able to go shop online for all sorts of gadgets or clothes or random household goods in the same way that an American household would be able to. So I think the value proposition is something that they're definitely going to have to be looking at very closely. But I think fundamentally for us, focusing on the B2B supply chains for essential goods, it's a very different space, and I think the more investment that comes into e-commerce in Africa, the better.
Amazing. I'm going to end on a little bit of a fun one. What would it take to get you to sell your company?
The right deal.
Okay.
So look, obviously I have a fiduciary responsibility to my investors and also our employees, each one of whom is actually an owner in Wasoko, something that we've done very intentionally. So we have over 1,000 employees across Wasoko, starting from the warehouse porters moving goods around all the way up to myself. And ultimately, I want them to see the benefits of a successful startup, of a successful exit, in Africa. That is what actually kickstarts that next generation of successful companies that comes in and builds up the ecosystem. So, of course, we still very much believe in the growth and the potential that we're seeing, for the next several years. And our core plan is to take it all the way to IPO. But if Amazon or Alibaba or someone else comes along in the meantime with the right deal, let's definitely have a conversation.
All right, well, you heard it here first. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you. Great to be here.